My parents used my wedding savings for my twins' elaborate party, so I distanced myself from them. Now they've returned seeking assistance. I am a 28-year-old woman who has experienced an ongoing rivalry with my twin sister Emily since childhood. Our competition seems to be a common sibling scenario, but in our case, it was intensified by our parents' actions, perhaps unknowingly fostering this environment of comparison. Emily, born a mere 12 minutes before me, has always been regarded as the family's golden child. Those few minutes made her the eldest, and in my family's eyes, that set her apart in ways that seemed both profound and perplexing. Emily was celebrated as the miracle baby, always praised and never at fault, according to my parents' perspective. My earliest memory of this disparity dates back to kindergarten during the school play. I landed the lead role in Little Red Riding Hood, while Emily played a minor part as a flower. Despite my prominent role, my parents completely missed my performance when Emily began crying on stage after forgetting her 2 lines. They rushed to comfort her, leaving me to navigate my debut solo. That evening, my parents lauded Emily for her courage to face the audience, completely overlooking my contributions and efforts in the play. This pattern of unequal recognition continued throughout our primary school years. If Emily managed a C on a test, she was comforted with reassurances of, "Oh, honey, you tried your best," whereas my consistent A's barely garnered a nod. In 4th grade, I dedicated weeks to a science fair project on renewable energy, consulting with local environmental experts and building detailed models. My project won first place, earning a blue ribbon. But when I presented this achievement to my parents, their reaction was dismissive. Throughout my time at a prestigious university studying computer science, I maintained impeccable grades while working part-time to support myself. Each academic break, I returned home hopeful that my parents might finally acknowledge my efforts and achievement. Yet every visit revolved around Emily, her life decisions, her challenges, and her supposedly brave choices, like her decision to drop out of community college after just 1 semester, which was celebrated as a bold step towards forging her own path. During my junior year, a family gathering over Thanksgiving brought unexpected revelations. My uncle, often overly fond of his drinks, let slip a long-held family secret during a reflective moment about my mother's pregnancy. He revealed that my parents had not planned on having twins and were initially devastated at the news. According to him, my dad, typically non-confrontational, resignedly accepted the situation while my mom worried about how they would manage. Their coping strategy, it painfully became clear, involved prioritizing one child, Emily, who arrived first and was thus designated as the favorite. This preference was not subtle, but a pivotal and defining element of our family dynamics. The arbitrary 12 minutes of her being older had unjustly made her the priority. This confession, dropped casually at the dinner table, suddenly made sense of the long-standing neglect and indifference I had felt throughout my life. This revelation profoundly changed my outlook. I realized I was viewed as the surplus, the unplanned child they never hoped for. After this, I ceased my attempts to win their approval and redirected my focus solely on my personal and professional growth. I invested fully in my coursework and sought out internships that would propel my career forward, driven by a desire to succeed on my own terms. By graduation, my dedication had paid off with several job offers from prestigious tech companies. I chose to join a promising startup as a software engineer, where my contributions were quickly recognized, leading to a promotion to senior developer within 3 years. Meanwhile, Emily's life took a different turn as she planned an extravagant wedding with a wealthy man she met during a brief encounter at a pub. My parents were overjoyed about Emily's wedding plans, pouring endless hours into discussing every detail with her. In stark contrast, they barely remembered the name of the tech company where I was a senior developer, despite us gearing up for a significant initial public offering, IPO, that could make my stock options worth a fortune, potentially more than Emily's fiancé earned in a year. Despite my professional success, my parents showed little interest. Instead, what truly broke my heart was the situation with the wedding fund left by our grandmother, who had always treated Emily and me equally. Before she passed away, she explicitly stated that the money she left for us was to be divided equally for our weddings. She confided in me once, acknowledging the unfair treatment I received from our parents and expressing her wish for me to have something that was truly mine. Unfortunately, my parents disregarded her final wishes. Emily dreamed of an extravagant wedding with a celebrity photographer, a high-end gown, and multiple venues. Rather than advising her to scale back or asking her affluent fiance to contribute more, my parents decided to dip into my share of the inheritance without even consulting me. I only learned about this breach months later during a family gathering thanks to a revelation from my inebriated uncle. When I confronted them, their responses were dismissive and hurtful. My mother casually mentioned they intended to tell me eventually and promised reimbursement when possible. My father's justification stung the most. He argued that Emily needed the money more because she was the one getting married in a traditional sense, while implying that my career focus meant I wouldn't desire a lavish wedding myself. I stood there, feeling alienated and distant as I faced the people who were supposed to be my parent. That evening, I returned to my apartment feeling a profound emptiness, a void devoid of sadness or anger. It was clear that my parents didn't grasp the severity of their actions, believing that any sacrifice made for Emily was justified, even if it meant taking from me without consent. Emily had always been their focal point, overshadowing every significant event and achievement in my life. Reflecting on these moments, my high school graduation overlooked due to Emily's grade woes, my college scholarship barely acknowledged amidst her community college struggles, and my first job promotion ignored as she planned her wedding, I realized the extent of my sidelining. This prompted a decisive action I had delayed for far too long. I opened my laptop and composed an email to my parents. I confronted them about using my inheritance for Emily's wedding without my consent and expressed how their lifelong treatment of me had been more hurtful than the loss of money. In the email, I laid bare the painful truth. They had never hidden their preference for Emily over me, and I was done seeking their love and approval. I informed them that I no longer wished to maintain contact except for them to return the money they took. Sending that email felt like shedding an immense burden. I blocked their numbers and removed them from my social media accounts, severing ties to free myself from the comparison and neglect I had endured. For the first time, I no longer felt pressured to live up to Emily or seek approval I knew I'd never receive. It was liberating. This marked the beginning of a transformative year. I devoted myself fully to my career and personal growth. The IPO of my company was a success, and my stock options soared in value, surpassing the total cost of Emily's lavish wedding. I began therapy to heal from the childhood trauma and bought a home in a desirable part of the city. I built genuine friendships with people who valued me for who I am, not who I was in relation to Emily. Occasionally, Emily tried to reach out through distant relatives or mutual friends, sending messages about the importance of family sticking together or reminding me that I was still her sister. Emily's appeal to family unity felt hollow given her passive acceptance of our parents' disregard for my achievements and her happy use of my inheritance for her wedding. She, along with our parents, was complicit in the years of imbalance. Some relatives have accused me of overreacting, citing blood is thicker than water, and similar sentiments. Yet these were the same relatives who remained silent as they witnessed the favoritism Emily received for years. Now, their opinions no longer hold weight in my life. Interestingly, cutting off my family has clarified who truly supports me. My therapist has been instrumental in helping me understand that none of the favoritism or neglect was my fault. My coworkers celebrate my professional successes, and my college best friend was there to help me move into my new home. These people have shown themselves to be my real family. I have recently been offered a role as team lead in a newly opened office in another state by the company I work for. This is the first major decision I am making purely for myself, without weighing how it will stack up against Emily's achievements or worrying about my parents' reactions. It's incredibly freeing to live my life on my own terms. Sometimes I wonder if cutting my family off was too extreme. The question haunts me, especially when I browse forums like Reddit asking if I am the antagonist for severing ties. But whenever I entertain the idea of reconnecting, I remember the deep-seated feelings of inadequacy they fostered in me for years, and I'm reassured that my decision was just. However, my life took an unexpected turn recently. 2 weeks ago, while I was in a team meeting, my phone started buzzing relentlessly with calls from my uncle. I typically avoid family calls due to the inevitable drama they bring, but the urgency of these repeated calls prompted me to answer. My Uncle Greg's voice was shaky as he began, "Hey, it's Uncle Greg." His usually upbeat demeanor was absent, instantly signaling that something was seriously wrong. "I need to talk to you about your parents," he continued, causing a knot of anxiety to form in my stomach. I had not heard from my parents in 2 years, and I braced myself for bad news. "What's going on?" I managed to ask, trying to keep my voice steady. They've been in an accident, he replied. A serious one. They're in the hospital now. He took a deep breath before continuing. Their car was hit by a truck that ran a red light. Your dad is in critical condition, and your mom has several fractures. My Uncle Greg explained that my parents had been in the hospital for several days before anyone thought to inform me. They wanted me to let you know, he said in a calmer tone, suggesting they wanted to see me. But there was more to it. Their insurance was having issues. He revealed that 6 months earlier, my parents had allowed their health insurance to lapse due to financial mismanagement, including credit card debt and poor investments. The medical bills were already piling up, and they were nowhere near being discharged. I asked about Emily, already anticipating the answer. Uncle Greg sighed heavily before responding. Emily had visited once right after the accident, but claimed she couldn't help with the bills. She didn't want to ask her wealthy husband for money so soon after their honeymoon, and was now preoccupied with her stepchildren and new family. It was typical of Emily to find an excuse. Despite her reluctance to seek help for our parents, she had easily used my inheritance to fund her lavish wedding. After hanging up, I sat in my office looking out over the city skyline, lost in thought. With my stock options vested and substantial savings, I was financially capable of covering their medical expenses. But did I want to? The situation was rich with irony. For days, I was distracted, my mood tied to the buzz of my phone, half expecting updates on their condition. Images of them in hospital beds haunted me, and despite everything, I felt a pang of guilt at the thought of not helping them. They were still my parents after all. Yet, the years of favoritism, the misappropriation of my inheritance, and their sudden reach out for help, now clearly driven by necessity rather than a desire to reconnect, weighed heavily on me. It was about the money, not about mending our relationship. 3 days after Greg's call, Emily sent me a text. I know you're doing well at work. Our parents really need help. Please, this is your chance to do the right thing. Her plea for moral action stung, given her past indifference to my feelings and her use of my funds for her wedding. A week later, I finally received a call from my parents. My mother's voice, frail. My mother began the conversation as if the previous 2 years of estrangement had never occurred, saying, "Sweetheart, we're in a really tough situation here. The cost could go up to $200,000, not including rehabilitation." She admitted they had failed as parents, but before she could continue, I interrupted. "No, you aren't, and you never have been. You haven't reached out in 2 years, and now you suddenly remember. I exist because you need money," my father chimed in, likely on speakerphone. "That's not fair. We're your parents. Family supports family." His words triggered a surge of long-suppressed anger. "Family helps family?" I repeated. "Where was that sentiment when you used my inheritance for Emily's wedding? When you missed my college graduation? When have you ever prioritized my life's significant events over Emily?" There was a pause, then the familiar sound of my mother crying, those manipulative sobs meant to make me feel guilty. "How can you be so cruel?" she asked. "We're in the hospital. Your dad might need surgery. Will you really abandon us now?" Taking a deep breath, I found the resolve to say the words I had needed to say for years. "Yes, I will. You emotionally abandoned me all my life. I was just Emily's shadow. Your backup plan. Now that Emily won't help, you turn to me. But no, I will not be your last resort." "But we're family," my father tried again. "No," I interrupted firmly. "We haven't been a family since you decided Emily was the only child worthy of your love. I'm done. Do not contact me again." After hanging up, I blocked their numbers again. I also sent one last message to Emily. "They're your parents too. You deal with it." The following days were tough. I found myself questioning my decision. Was I being too harsh? Should I have helped them despite everything? But each time these doubts crept in, I reminded myself of the lifetime of neglect and favoritism I endured, and how they only reached out when they needed something. Yesterday, Uncle Greg called again, trying to guilt-trip me, saying that my parents needed surgery and physical therapy as their health was deteriorating. Uncle Greg explained that my parents were considering remortgaging their home, as they might lose everything due to their financial missteps. Yet, I had to remind myself that their financial predicament was not my responsibility. They had made their choices, prioritizing Emily, mismanaging the inheritance I was left, and letting their insurance lapse. They were now facing the consequences of those decisions. Some might call me heartless, and perhaps in their eyes, I am. I've spent my whole life trying to earn their love and approval, always being the fallback when Emily wouldn't step up. But I've reached a point where I choose my own mental and financial well-being over their guilt trips and poor planning. On Reddit, I've debated whether cutting ties made me the antagonist But now I question if not helping with their medical bills does as well. Even my therapist finds this situation ethically ambiguous. While I feel a twinge of guilt, I recognize this as yet another scenario where they only seek me out when they need something. And the story doesn't end here. It only grows more complex. 3 days ago, after a particularly taxing day finalizing the new office opening, my evening took an unexpected turn. At 8:07 p.m., while I was reviewing project documents and enjoying a glass of fine red wine, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends usually text first. Curiosity led me to the peephole where I saw Emily standing outside. Dressed like the wealthy trophy wife she had become, her appearance was marked by a fashionable gown, perfect makeup, and a $15,000 purse in her hand. The irony of that purse's value possibly covering a significant portion of our parents' medical expenses wasn't lost on me. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but I realized something had shifted in me over the past few. Resolved to confront the situation head on, I opened the door with the poised, detached demeanor I usually reserve for the corporate boardroom. Leaning against the doorframe, I greeted her coolly. "Well, if it isn't my dear sister, what brings you to my humble abode?" Without waiting for an invitation, Emily swept past me into my apartment, her gaze quickly scanning my living space, from the original artwork adorning the walls to the sleek contemporary furnishings and the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. I could almost hear her mentally comparing each detail to her own suburban McMansion. "Nice place, Chibam," she remarked, her tone dripping with insincerity. "Very cozy." She used the word cozy in that patronizing way the affluent often do to imply something is beneath them. "Why are you here, Emily?" I asked, cutting through her pretense. She turned to face me, nervously adjusting her scarf, a habit from our childhood. "Mom and Dad are in bad shape," she confessed. "Mom's physical therapy isn't covered by their plan, and Dad needs emergency surgery for internal bleeding that was initially overlooked. The hospital is threatening to suspend their treatment unless they can provide proof of payment. They're talking about selling the house." I noticed her knuckles whiten as she clutched her expensive purse tighter, a telltale sign she was bracing herself for more than just a casual visit. "And that's my problem because," I prompted, arching an eyebrow and mirroring the condescending tone she once frequently used on me. "Because you can help them," she blurted out, her facade beginning to crack. "I know your company went public. I've seen the stock prices. You have the money." Her words drew a laugh from me, sharper than intended, echoing off the walls of my apartment. "Oh, you've been keeping tabs on me. That's interesting. Did you do your research before using my inheritance for your wedding? Or before you decided not to help them yourself?" Her face flushed a deep red, a vivid reminder of the temper tantrums from our youth that always ended with our parents rushing to console her. "That's different," she stammered, her composure slipping further. "I have a new family now. I have responsibilities, stepchildren. James and I have our financial arrangements. I can't just throw money at a problem whenever it arises." "Can't just what?" I interrupted firmly. "Can't you simply help your parents, the ones who gave you everything? Who financed your wedding using my inheritance? Who always put you first? Who skipped my college graduation to help you move into your apartment? Those same parents," I reminded her, each question sharpening my resolve as Emily tried to dismiss it all with a wave of her hand. "That's ancient history," she retorted, but I noticed her take a step back, the impact of my words not lost on her. "This is about right now. You're being selfish and they need help." Her calling me selfish was the catalyst for a decisive response. Years of suppressed anger and bitterness crystallized into a singular, clear purpose. I walked quietly to my home office, retrieved my laptop and some documents from my desk, and returned to confront her in the living room. "Emily, since we're discussing money, let's really talk about it," I said, turning my portfolio dashboard towards her. "See these numbers? These are my stock options. I'll put it in terms you can understand. This is worth more than James, your husband. In 3 years, that house you're so proud of, I could buy it outright if I wanted." As Emily stared at the numbers, her complexion turned pale. I continued, displaying documents like my investment portfolio, my recent pay stubs, and offers from competing companies. For the first time, I saw her genuinely flustered. "But you're just a tech worker, just a programmer." She tried to diminish my achievement. "Actually, Emily, I'm now a senior development director," I corrected her calmly, pride in my voice. "I've built something for myself while you and your wealthy husband played house, and I did it without stepping on anyone else. Unlike you." With a firm click, I shut my laptop. "I could easily cover Mom and Dad's medical bills," I continued, her accusation of cruelty hanging in the air. But I won't. She whispered that I was being cruel, but her eyes revealed a realization that her younger sister had surpassed her expectations and grievances. No, Emily. What's truly cruel is standing by and doing nothing while your sister is consistently marginalized and ignored. Cruel is using her inheritance without asking. Cruel is only showing up on her doorstep when you need something. My words were final, leaving no room for further argument. I walked over to the door and pulled it open decisively. Are we done here? Please don't come back. Emily stood frozen, clutching her expensive purse like a lifeline. She made a final feeble attempt to sway me, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. You'll regret this when they lose everything. My response was calm and resolute. My only regret is not cutting ties sooner. Goodbye, Emily. After she left, I poured myself another glass of wine from a 200er bottle I had been saving for a special occasion. This moment felt fitting. I stepped out onto my balcony, the city lights spread before me like a vast tapestry of freedom and opportunity. For the first time in my life, I felt truly liberated. No more would I live in Emily's shadow, no more guilt, no more seeking approval. The next morning, my phone was bombarded with notifications. Emily had spent the night calling every family member she could, painting me as a heartless, changed person who abandoned the family in their time of need. In response, Uncle Greg sent me a lengthy email preaching about karma and family responsibilities. I countered by sharing a comprehensive folder in the family group chat. It contained scanned copies of my inheritance documents, bank statements showing how my funds were used for Emily's wedding, texts from Emily refusing to help with the medical bills despite her wealth, and a breakdown of my net worth illustrating that I could help financially if I chose to. The family chat went quiet after my disclosure. Only our cousin Angela responded, her message reading, "Holy, you actually did it, didn't you? You really made it on your own." Inspired by the clarity this situation brought, I spent the next few days finalizing my plans for the future. I accepted a promotion that involved relocating to another state, which came with an enhanced package of stock options and a significant salary increase. My apartment, situated in a sought-after neighborhood, was listed for sale and was expected to fetch far more than the asking price due to its location and appeal. I began scouting for real estate in the new city, possibly even a penthouse this time. Emily's final text came through last night. "Mom's crying every night because of you." I replied sharply, her years of indifference reflected in my words. She had years to cry about how she treated me, and attached a screenshot of my inheritance documents. Her tears no longer affect me. Following that, I blocked her number along with the rest of my family contacts. It felt like closing the last chapter of a book I should have finished years ago. Throughout this journey, your support has been incredible. Reading your comments, I realized I was not alone in my struggle. Your words reassured me that prioritizing my well-being over toxic family relationships was not only acceptable, but necessary. Whenever I doubted my decisions, your encouragement served as a crucial reminder of the path I had chosen. Recently, someone asked me if achieving financial success was worth sacrificing my family ties. The reality is, I didn't sacrifice family because the people I distanced myself from never genuinely acted as family towards me. My success didn't change who I am. It simply empowered me to reject their negative treatment and assert my independence. I'm deeply thankful for everyone who shared similar experiences, offered advice, or simply affirmed my feelings. Your support was a pillar of strength when I needed it most. Next week, I'll begin house hunting in my new city. I'm embarking on a new life with a new career and a new home, and for the first time, I'm genuinely excited about the future, free from the shackles of familial obligation. To some, I may appear as the villain. However, I've learned an important lesson. Being labeled as difficult by toxic people is often a sign that you are finally standing up for yourself. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me find my voice and recognize my worth. Thank you for being part of my story. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and click the notification bell to stay updated with more real-life stories like mine.